Good day, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. This is the weekly recap of all the top stories condensed into one convenient location for you here on the weekend. We hope you enjoy it. Enjoy your weekend, and we will see you next week. And the first thing we have to deal with is Bryan Kohberger. Yes, Bryan Kohberger apparently doesn't like people staring at him. And that's what his attorneys are asking the court to do. Mr. Kohberger's attorneys, don't want the trial to be televised. So the defense attorneys for Mr. Kohberger filed a motion. And the issue is whether Mr. Kohberger faces deprivation of his rights under the 14th Amendment to due process by the continued televising and broadcasting of his trial. Now, they cite to a case going back to 1965, the Estes v. State of Texas case, for that particular proposition. Now, the attorneys cite in their motion that recent press behavior in the courtroom clearly demonstrates that such is the case. So nearly 2 months ago, on June 27th, the court warned press observers not to focus strictly on Mr. Kohberger and show a wide shot of the courtroom if they wish to continue filming the court proceedings. So the judge presiding over the Bryan Kohberger case warned the media at the hearing back on June 27th not to, do close-ups of Mr. Kohberger. And so the press said, sure. Well, apparently, according to the defense attorneys, press observers have thus far failed to comply with the court's direction as the continued publication of such images, and this is what they put in their motion. You can take a look at these motions. Do you think it's too focused on Bryan Kohberger? Are you wondering, whoa, look at those beady little eyes, he must be innocent or guilty? No, that's what happens. I'll talk about that in a minute. Let's read on. So these photos, the defense argues, is a blatant violation of the court's orders to cease focusing exclusively on Mr. Kohberger in their own right, and are also some other articles that are sensationalizing and with very prejudicial headlines. And the content, most of the three photos that they cite in their motion goes back to the Daily Beast article. Report says Kohberger creepiness with women goes back to high school. The defense says, hey, the cameras continued exclusively focused on Mr. Kohberger provides fodder for observers and purported analysts on social media who are not bound by the notions of journalistic integrity and who have potentially an even greater reach than traditional media outlets. I wonder if they're talking about us. Anyway, the proliferation of these images and videos is plainly observable on social media platforms such as TikTok and X. In post, as the press notes in the court's June 27th admonition, the court referenced the recent Chad Daybell trial when cameras were asked to leave because they focused too much on the defendant. Indeed, such a parallel was drawn in the defense prior memorandum on cameras during that hearing, yet camera-wielding courtroom observers remained undeterred. The chief function of our judicial machinery is to ascertain the truth. The use of television, however, cannot be said to contribute materially to this objective. Rather, its use amounts to the injection of an irrelevant factor into the court proceedings, once again citing to that Supreme Court case, Estes. His attorneys continue, the circumstances present in Mr. Kohberger's case are singular and pose an extraordinary risk of prejudice beyond even that posed in Estes. Observers' continued failure to comply with the court's directive compounds this problem and results in the potential jury pool's constant inundation with conclusory accusations and sensationalistic nonsense guised as factual reporting analysis. Whereas in Estes, the attendant risk of prejudice was limited to potential jurors watching of television or reading of print media, now the risk follows the potential jury pool whenever they go, viewable on their smartphones and constantly updated by thousands of unchecked sources. Now, each juror carries with him into the jury box these solemn facts and thus increases the chance of prejudice that is present in every criminal case. It is not only possible but highly probable that it will have a direct bearing on his vote as to guilt or innocence. The images provided above in their brief state that during pretrial court proceedings but pose no less danger. To the contrary, they gradually poison the potential jury pool prior to the trial even occurring, whittling the number of jurors able to render a just and unbiased verdict. To the extent that television shapes sentiment, it can strip the accused of a fair trial. And they say, hey, that Estes court back in the 60s itself noted that unrestricted television coverage can be corrosive to the non-trial proceedings and preemptively limit the potential for an eventual fair verdict. The inevitable close-up of the gestures and expressions during the ordeal of this trial might well transgress his personal sensibilities, his dignity, and his ability to concentrate on the proceedings before him. Sometimes the difference between life and death, they argue, dispassionately, freely, and without the distraction of the wide public surveillance. A defendant on trial for a specific crime is entitled to his day in court, not a stadium or a city of nationwide arenas. Similarly, Mr. Kohberger is entitled to defend himself against capital criminal charges without cameras focusing on his every move. In addition to the inordinate and exclusive focus on Mr. Kohberger, courtroom observers have routinely violated this order going back to May 16th, providing in part that no video or still photograph shall be taken of any papers, documents, or notes which may be located on or around the counsel table or used by counsel. That was in the General Order governing courtroom procedure and conduct. This noncompliance is clearly demonstrated in the below provided photos taken during the most recent hearing and has continuously undermined the court's stated interest in maintaining order and an environment that permits all participants to focus on their responsibilities without undue distractions. Now, aware of the constant attention paid to counsel table and the risk that confidential and sensitive information could be scrutinized, photographed, and even published, defense counsel has been cautious. This exact conduct was found by the Estes Court to be of circumstances depriving the petitioner of a fair trial. In Estes, the petitioner was subject to characterizations and minute electronic scrutiny to such an extent that one point the photographers were found attempting to picture the page of the paper from which he was reading while sitting at counsel table. Whereas in Estes, this conduct was characterized as a singular and extreme occurrence, in the present case, it has become disruptively routine and must be abated if Mr. Kohberger is to receive effective representation. All right, let's respond to this motion. Okay? Get over it. You don't want the potential jurors looking at your client. Well, guess what? The greatest disinfectant of all evil is sunlight. Sunlight. If you think there's something wrong, bring it out. Let's see it in open court. Oh, we don't want the potential jurors hearing about this case. Listen, I think we saw from the Daybell case, you know, the old joke I had a law professor say, 12 people good and true, referring to jurors, otherwise unemployable. That used to be kind of the joke. Okay, I have no problem with jurors. Jurors get it right 99% of the time. We need jurors. But I think we saw in the Daybell case, yes, you're going to find people that have never heard of that case. They will find people in Idaho that have not heard of the Kohberger case. So get over it, okay? And guess what? Maybe you should file a motion, their defense attorneys, to say, we don't want the jury looking at our client. Let me assure you, the jurors are looking at your client. If your client has some weird tick or mannerism that you don't like, better find out about it now and change that before you get to the people that really matters, the 12 people. Just go try your case, okay? I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'm a big advocate for cameras in the courtroom. I think they should be in every courtroom, in every jurisdiction. You should be able to go to a link and see what's going on in that court's house today. It is open to the public. We are not back in a courtroom in 1860 where, we waited for the word from the newspaper. It's instantaneous these days. So people need to get used to it and get used to the change. Just try your case. And my experience is when the cameras are in the courtroom, you get better lawyering. So quit worrying about what everybody else is watching. Try your case and let's move forward. Come on, get over it. I get it. You're trying to do what you think is best for your client. I get it. But if your client is as innocent as he professes and you profess that he isn't, I get it. I'm a defense attorney. I get it. Go let the world see the evidence or the lack thereof so that they can make up their mind themselves. Oh, and by the way, the prosecution needs a little more time to respond to the motion to dismiss. As you may recall, the defense filed a motion to dismiss the indictment, basically saying the whole thing was a complete mess. And of course, we don't know exactly what the whole thing is, a big complete mess, because that motion is filed under seal. Now, you would think, as a defense attorney, if you had the smoking gun that the prosecutor had screwed it up, I would not file that motion under seal. I would file that motion for the world to see and say, look how bad those guys screwed it up. So, just saying, you can't have your cake and eat it too. And I think that motion is not going to fly because basically they said the prosecution didn't comply with the rules of evidence at the grand jury proceedings. Newsflash, rules of evidence don't apply at a grand jury proceeding. Just saying. And I know they know that, but that's really what they were saying. Buster Murdaugh. You remember Alec Murdaugh's son? The redheaded one? The one that's still alive? Well, he is breaking his silence about the death of his high school classmate in a new documentary that is going to be released next week. Now, Buster has been the focus of rumors and innuendo surrounding the death of Stephen Smith back in July of 2015. Now, Smith was a young, openly gay teenager whose body was found in the middle of a road there in Hampton, South Carolina, and he had suffered some head trauma. Everyone tried to say he was hit by a car, but the investigation, the evidence at the scene didn't make sense of this hit and run that a lot of people tried to buy off on, so to speak. For example, Smith's shoes remained on. Usually when somebody's hit and run, the shoes fly off, particularly because in this case, Mr. Smith was hit there on the road and his shoes were on and they were untied. And then the Murdaughs stepped in. They were going to represent him if there was anything charged. The whole thing's just weird. So a lot of people made allegations that, well, it probably had something to do with those Murdaughs and old Buster. And some, salacious allegations were made and nothing ever came of it. But then, as you may recall, when the police were executing search warrants at the Moselle property, when they were investigating the deaths of Maggie and Paul, Alex Murdaugh's wife and son that aren't living anymore. In fact, he's been convicted of their deaths. Guess what? They reopened that investigation based upon items that were found. Now, Mr. Smith's death was initially ruled a hit and run, but obviously the state troopers investigating the crash took issue with the findings, as did the Smiths family. Now, small-time gossip fueled rumors that Buster Murdaugh was in a possible relationship with Mr. Smith. Now, Buster Murdaugh and Smith were together at the Wade Hampton High School. They were simply classmates, and they played on the same baseball team. Now, Buster Murdaugh is speaking about all these rumors in an interview for a documentary that's going to air next week. It's called The Fall of the House of Murdaugh. And he states, I quote, "I never had anything to do with his murder, and I never had anything to do with him on a physical level," says Buster. Now, like I said, speculation about Buster Murdaugh's involvement in Smith's death intensified when Smith's mother had her son's body exhumed and another autopsy was performed. Now, the documentaries and podcasts have kind of focused on rumors. The state troopers heard about Buster Murdaugh and Smith during the investigation. The speculation prompted Buster to issue a statement denying what he called vicious rumors. The statement and the body being exhumed follows Alec Murdaugh's trial, in which he was convicted, obviously, of the murders of Maggie and Paul. Now, this will be the first time that Buster Murdaugh has granted an interview about the murders or Smith's case. It all marks the second time that the general public will hear from Buster himself. Now, Buster was asked where he was the night that Mr. Smith was killed. Journalists setting him up, perhaps? Well, he says, Mr. Buster Murdaugh says, the night Stephen was killed, I was at our Edisto Beach house. Buster claims. The reporter asks then, well, who are you with? Your family? My mom and my brother. Ooh, they're not around to corroborate that, are they now? Anyway, when asked about how the rumors has affected his life, Buster became emotional and said, well, let me tell you, this is very, 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 it had that many varies. It's a terrible thing to place on somebody with absolutely no facts. I mean, it has harmed my reputation. People perceive me as a murderer. Now, according to Sandy Smith's lawyer, a grand jury was impaneled to investigate Smith's death earlier this summer, but the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, aka SLED, has investigating Smith's deaths since June of 2021, and obviously no true bill has been returned on an indictment as of yet. We will have to wait and see. Somehow I think nothing will come from it, but this new documentary will air August 31st. Next on the docket, Bryan Kohberger. The press is going to fight the attempts by the defense to keep cameras out of the courtroom. Good for them. So a loosely organized group of news organizations plans to fight an attempt by the murder suspect's defense team to have cameras removed from the court hearings. Now, obviously, Bryan Kohberger faces the death penalty if he's convicted of killing Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogan, Ethan Chabin, and Zaina Kernodle. Needless to say, this case has had significant attention since the murders last fall near the University of Idaho campus. Now, Kohberger's defense team has previously argued against journalists accessing court hearings, calling the media attention twisted and grotesque. In a recent filing, the defense team accused the media organizations of violating a judge's order not to focus solely on their client and saying images of their client in the pretrial hearing will poison the jury pool. Now, the attorneys for the group, which includes many news organizations throughout the country, have filed a motion to intervene, asking that the group's voice be heard in arguing against the motion. The group of these news media organizations include other local and national news companies, as well as state and local organizations. The news organizations have previously argued that the gag order in this case was overly broad and limited public access to the proceedings. And at the time of those filings, the judge reserved judgment on allowing cameras in the courtroom, saying they were allowed now, but that he could change his mind at any time. Obviously, the press believes that the media access can be done responsively and responsibly, and especially in death penalty cases, is necessary to ensure that criminal proceedings are done fairly and in the public eye. The media group points to an article mentioned in the defense motion in which the defense says that Fox News focuses strictly on Kohberger. The coalition points out that in the story, photos also showed Kohberger's attorney entering the courtroom, the prosecutors, and the murder victims, and even a still photo from a previous traffic stop involving Mr. Kohberger. Attorneys point to several other stories done in national and local media that don't focus solely on Kohberger, but instead include images of the victim and the video of the other participants in the court hearings. Now, the judge has scheduled a hearing on this matter for Friday. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, it's no secret as to what my position is. I would have cameras in every courtroom across the country. Shouldn't be a big deal. Let's face it, these attorneys for the defense, Mr. Kohberger's attorneys, are doing their job. Let's face it, they want to have the cameras in there. They're just doing what they have to do, but they want them there. It works better for everybody else. You're going to see better lawyering if the proceedings are televised. Although I guess we didn't really see that in the Lori Vallow case. But, there's always a shot. And we deserve to see, the public deserves to see what's taking place. And why would the government, the judges, the court system, the prosecutors, the public defenders not want the world to see what they're doing and how the judicial system is being executed in this process? What? You mean the judges don't want to be criticized? The public defenders don't want to be criticized? Maybe the prosecutors don't want to be criticized? Oh, maybe that's really what it boils down to. It's not really about keeping everything focused just on Bryan Kohberger. No, it's so we don't focus on the prosecutors and the attorneys and the judges to see if they're doing their rights and if they're doing their jobs correctly.
As a pet owner, you want to give your furry friend the very best. That's why Baked in Colorado's CBD-infused dog treats are the perfect choice. These delicious treats not only taste great, but they also provide a wide range of health benefits for your pet. CBD has been shown to have many positive effects on dogs, including reducing anxiety, alleviating pain and inflammation, and improving overall wellness. Baked in Colorado's treats are infused with premium, full-spectrum CBD oil, meaning your pet will benefit from the whole plant extract. Not only that, but Baked in Colorado's treats are made with all-natural human-grade ingredients, so you can feel good about what you're giving your pet. They're also free from wheat, corn, and soy, making them a great option for dogs with food sensitivities. Baked in Colorado CBD-infused dog treats are the perfect way to support your pet's health and well-being. With various flavors, including peanut butter, pumpkin, and bacon, your dog will love them too. So why wait? Head to www.bakedincolorado.com today and order your dog a bag of these delicious and nutritious treats. Your pet will thank you for it.
Is there a connection between a missing woman in South Carolina and the Gilgo Beach suspect? Well, police are investigating if there is in fact a connection between the Gilgo Beach suspect, Rex Huermann, and the disappearance of a South Carolina woman back in 2017. That woman's name is Julie Ann Bean, and she was last seen in Sumter County, South Carolina on May 31st, 2017, and her daughter reported her missing on November 18th that same year. Now, a person apparently anonymously called and claimed to be a friend of Bean, and they reached out to the sheriff's office and said that there may have been a connection between Miss Bean and Mr. Huermann. Well, for those who aren't familiar, the Gilgo Beach murders were a series of slayings that spooked the Long Island, New York area for years, and 11 sets of human remains have been found in or near the Ocean Parkway in Long Island since 2010. Now, Rex Huermann, he is the New York City architect who was arrested in July in connection with the slayings of these women, or at least of several women. Remains were found near the Gilgo Beach, and he is considered the prime suspect in the disappearance of the fourth woman, a group that has been dubbed the Gilgo Four. Now, the victims were all believed to have been sex workers who advertised online sites, according to the police. Now, Huermann has pled not guilty to the charges, and the Sumter County officials down there in South Carolina said that the tipster did not reside in the county and provided third-hand information. But the team is going to investigate Bean's disappearance, and they've obviously met and shared the information with the FBI. The Sumter County Sheriff's issued a statement stating that investigators have been poring over the recently received information to determine if there is any evidentiary link between Miss Bean's disappearance and Mr. Huermann. Yet there are no confirmed facts that confirm or deny the possibility of a connection. The sheriff's office said that investigators are interviewing individuals and looking into reports that Bean may have been seen with Mr. Huermann, and the work is ongoing, and Miss Bean's missing persons case will remain open until she is found. Now, what does this mean? An anonymous tip to a police department? Well, hopefully somebody has some real information that it can be corroborated. Otherwise, it's just, well, it's kind of the equivalent of a false word to the police, making false accusations, and it just wastes police resources. So hopefully it is something legitimate. And if it's not, hopefully it is resolved quickly so we don't waste the limited resources of the police.